I was standing in the kitchen holding a glass of orange juice when my son, my only son, walked in and shattered my entire life without even meaning to. He said, "Hey Dad, guess what? I got my DNA results back," and laughed like it was nothing, like it was just another TikTok trend. I smiled, not even blinking, and asked him to read it out loud. He did. And as he read the results, line by line, casually sipping from his water bottle, I felt the walls start to tilt around me. No genetic match to the paternal line. Not even a partial. My ears started ringing so loud I couldn't hear the end of what he was saying, but I smiled anyway. I nodded. I joked, "Maybe I'm adopted," and he laughed. Then he left to go hang out with friends. And I stood there. For a full 10 minutes. Motionless. Breath held. Jaw tight. Because in that moment, I realized two things at once. One, I wasn't his biological father. And two, my wife had known this all along. For the next hour, I paced. Back and forth through the house I thought I built on love, through the living room with the photos of the three of us, through the hallway with our vacation pictures, through the bedroom where we used to lie and whisper plans about the future. My hands were shaking, but I kept it together. I knew I couldn't say anything. Not yet. Not until I was sure. I needed confirmation, not just gut feeling. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I waited until my son was asleep and took one of his old retainers from the bathroom drawer. I still remembered the packaging from the dentist. DNA could be pulled from the casing if it hadn't been washed. I didn't know what I was doing exactly, but I knew enough. I knew how to find a lab. I knew how to pay for silence. I knew how to smile through the lie until I had the truth in black and white. I mailed the sample out under a fake name. 2 weeks. That's how long they said it would take. 2 weeks to find out if my entire life had been built on a foundation of betrayal. During those 2 weeks, I did what I'd always done. I cooked dinner. I worked late. I picked up groceries. I told my wife I loved her. I told my son I was proud of him. And every single time I said it, it tasted more like blood. On the 9th day, I found myself sitting in the garage at 3 a.m., staring at our family's old photo albums. Birthdays. Halloween. His first day of school. Every single memory I had was filtered through this new lens. Was I even supposed to be there? Had I been the punchline of someone else's joke all along? I tried to convince myself there could be a logical explanation. Maybe it was a lab error. Maybe it was something rare, like a chimera gene. I googled every possibility, desperate for an answer that didn't involve deceit. But nothing I read explained it away. Not really. I knew the truth before the results arrived. I just didn't want to believe it. When the envelope came, I was alone. It was a Saturday morning, and my wife had gone to yoga. My son was still asleep. I opened the envelope with surgical care. Inside, a thin stack of documents and a line highlighted in yellow. Paternity exclusion, 100%. That was it. That was the moment I stopped being his father in blood. But not in heart. And that distinction tore me apart. I sat on the couch for what felt like hours. Not moving. Not crying. Just staring at the words. That's when it hit me, the timeline. My son was born in June. We had conceived in September. At least, that's what I'd believed. But that September had always felt strange. My wife had gone to visit her sister in another state for a weekend. She came back distant. Quiet. And then, a week later, she told me she was pregnant. I never questioned it. I never had a reason to. We were trying, after all. It had been months of frustration and ovulation tests and calendars. But something about her tone, her timing, it all came back now in sharp, unforgiving detail. I remembered the way she avoided eye contact when she told me. The way she clutched the test like it was her salvation. I remembered her reaction when the doctor first told us it was a boy. She broke down crying, more than I expected. Almost like guilt was pouring out of her. I hadn't understood then. But I did now. I didn't confront her that day. Or the next. Instead, I started going through everything. Emails. Photos. Receipts. I pulled old text messages from the cloud. And what I found made my stomach turn. A number saved under a fake name, Mandy. But there were no texts from a woman. Just one side of the conversation. Hers. I can't talk anymore. It's done. Please don't contact me again. You'll ruin everything. The last message was dated just 2 weeks before our son was born. And it wasn't a woman's number. I traced it. It belonged to a man she used to work with, a man I'd met once, who had shaken my hand with a grip too tight and eyes that didn't meet mine. His name was Andrew. He had moved across the country the year our son turned 1. I had thought it was just coincidence. I reached out to him. I didn't plan to, but I couldn't stop myself. I called from a burner number. He picked up on the 3rd ring. I didn't introduce myself. I didn't need to. I just asked, does the name Michelle mean anything to you? There was a pause. And then he hung up. I called back. No answer. I sent a text. I know. DNA confirmed. Just tell me if you knew. He never replied. But later that night, I got a message from an unknown number. I'm sorry. I never knew for sure. She told me it wasn't mine. Said it was yours. I left because I couldn't live with it either way. That was all I needed. My wife had lied. Not just once. Not just for a moment. She had built an entire life around a lie. She had looked me in the eyes every day for 18 years and let me believe that boy was mine. And here's the cruel part, I still loved him. More than anything. That's when I knew this wasn't going to be simple revenge. This wasn't about yelling or screaming or throwing clothes onto the lawn. This was going to be slow. Precise. Measured. Because what she stole from me wasn't money or pride. It was fatherhood. It was the sacred trust between a man and the family he thought he created. She took that and buried it beneath years of false smiles and whispered apologies for things I never understood. And she was going to pay for that. But not with blood. With truth. I started preparing. Quietly. I met with a lawyer. I didn't file for divorce yet. I just asked questions. What were my rights? What would happen if I exposed the lie? What were the legal implications of raising a child under false paternity? My lawyer looked at me long and hard and said, "Do you want custody?" I said, "I want him to know the truth. Then I want him to choose." The lawyer nodded. "Then you'll need more than a DNA test. You'll need context. Motive. A pattern." So I started collecting. Over the next month, I built a folder, texts, old emails, photos with timestamps that didn't line up, messages she thought were deleted but had synced to the cloud. I wasn't just building a case. I was building a mirror. One that she would be forced to look into. And when she did, she'd see the reflection of the life she destroyed. But I wasn't ready to confront her yet. Because I wasn't sure how my son would react. I needed to protect him. Not from her. But from the impact. I still called him son. I still saw myself in his walk, in the way he thought too much before speaking, in the way he tried to fix everything on his own. Maybe blood didn't matter. But betrayal did. And she had betrayed both of us. The moment came 3 weeks later. She was cooking dinner. Stirring pasta like it was any other Wednesday. I sat down across from her and slid the folder onto the table. She looked at it. Then at me. Then back at it. "What's this?" she asked. I didn't answer. I just said, "Open it." Her hands trembled slightly. She opened it. Slowly. As she flipped through each page, her face changed. First confusion. Then fear. Then the cold, undeniable realization. "You went digging," she whispered. I nodded. "And I found more than I expected." She sat down. Hard. The spoon slipped from her hand and clattered against the floor. "I can explain," she said. "Don't," I replied. "Don't insult me by trying to rewrite it now." "I didn't know for sure," she said, voice barely above a whisper. I thought it was you." I leaned forward. "But you knew it might not be. And you never told me. You made me raise a child under a lie." Her eyes welled with tears. "He is your son." "No," I said. "He's my boy. But he's not my son." "You made sure of that." She reached for my hand. I pulled away. That was the first time she cried in front of me in years. But it didn't matter. Because that night, everything changed. Not just between us. But in me. I wasn't going to destroy her. I was going to let the truth do it for me. And that was only the beginning. The next morning, she was gone before I woke up. No note. No explanation. Just an empty space on the bed and the faint scent of her shampoo on the pillow. I stood there for a while, staring at the sheets like they might rearrange themselves into answers. But there were none. She had run. At first I thought she might have left for good, gone to her sister's again like she had all those years ago when this all started. But at 8:14 a.m. I got a text. Just 3 words, "We need time." No punctuation. No warmth. Just cold space. I didn't reply. I made coffee, sat at the table, and stared out the window while the steam rose. The silence in the house felt different now. It wasn't peace. It was void. A place where lies used to live. At 9:30, our son came downstairs, yawning and scrolling on his phone. He smiled, asked what was for breakfast. And I stood there thinking, he doesn't know. He doesn't even have a clue. My stomach twisted, not from anger, but from guilt. Because I was about to become the villain in his eyes, at least for a while. The moment I told him, I'd be the man who shattered his reality, even if I didn't put the first crack in it. That day, I went to work like nothing happened. I walked into meetings, smiled at coworkers, reviewed contracts, all while carrying the weight of an 18-year lie in my chest like it was stapled to my heart. That evening, she still hadn't come home. I made dinner for my son, chicken stir-fry, his favorite. We sat at the table, talked about school, about college apps, about his soccer team. And all the while I kept thinking, what if he never looks at me the same again? That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the garage again, alone, reading and rereading the DNA report, as if some hidden line would magically reverse it all. It didn't. Around midnight, I got a second text from her. This one longer. "I didn't want to lose you. I didn't want to ruin our family." I panicked. I lied. Then it became too late to tell the truth. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back, "It became too late the moment you decided for both of us." She didn't reply. The next day, I met with my lawyer again. I laid out the full truth now, not just about the DNA, but about the messages, the timeline, the silence. He nodded slowly and said, "You have grounds for fraudulent concealment. You could sue. You could make this very public." I asked, would it help him? He shook his head. It would tear him apart. That's when I realized this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclamation. Taking back my voice. My truth. But doing it in a way that didn't destroy the one innocent person caught in the middle. My son. That night, I asked him if he'd go for a drive. Just the two of us. We went to our old spot, an overlook just past the ridge where we used to stargaze when he was little. We sat in the truck, windows down, cool air on our skin, and I turned off the music. "There's something I need to tell you," I said, voice low. He turned to me, a little confused. "What's going on?" I reached into the glove box and handed him the DNA report. He took it, brows furrowed, scanning the lines. "What is this?" he asked. "It's your paternity test," I said. "The one you did online." "Yeah, I told you about it." "I know," I replied. "I sent a second sample to a separate lab. Just to be sure." He blinked. "Why?" "Because the results didn't make sense," I said. "Because I needed to know the truth." His hand started shaking as he reread the page. "This says, you're not," I nodded. "Biologically?" "No. I'm not your father." Silence. Heavy. Awkward. Suffocating. He looked up at me, eyes wide. "So what does that mean? Who is?" I shook my head. "I don't know. I have suspicions. But what matters is, your mom knew. Since before you were born." He stared at the report again. Then back at me. "Did you know when I told you? When I showed you the results?" "I did," I said. But I didn't want to believe it. He looked like someone had slapped him. "So what now? You just leave?" "No," I said immediately. "Never. I raised you. I was there for every scraped knee, every school play, every nightmare. That doesn't disappear because of a blood test." He didn't say anything for a long time. Then, finally, "So she lied. For 18 years. "She did," I said. "To both of us." He was quiet again. And then, almost whispering, he asked, "Does that make me a mistake?" That broke me. I reached over, grabbed his shoulder, pulled him close. "You are the best thing that's ever happened to me. Don't you ever let her lie make you question your worth. Ever." He nodded slowly, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. And that's when I knew the damage had already begun. That night, we drove home in silence. When we got back, she was sitting in the living room. Pale. Hollow. Like a ghost of herself. "You told him," she said. I nodded. He deserved the truth. She turned to our son. "I'm sorry," she whispered. But he just walked past her, straight up the stairs, without a word. She turned back to me, tears brimming. "Is this the end?" I looked at her, the woman I had once loved enough to forgive anything, and said, "It's the end of the lie. What comes next is up to him." For the next week, we lived in silence. Not because we wanted to, but because the air between us had changed. My son barely spoke to either of us. My wife slept in the guest room. I started spending more time at the office. Every room in the house felt like it was echoing with ghosts, ghosts of a family that never truly existed. Then, one night, my son came into my room. He sat on the edge of the bed, eyes red. "I've been thinking," he said. "I don't care who gave me DNA. You were my dad. You are my dad. And I want to keep it that way." I felt my throat tighten. I nodded. "I'd like that. But I don't know what to do about her," he said quietly. "You don't have to decide now," I told him. "Take your time. Let yourself feel it all first." "She robbed us," he said. "Of something sacred." I couldn't argue with that. A few days later, my wife asked to talk. We sat at the dining table, the same one where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays, and she looked me in the eyes. "I'm not going to fight," she said. "If you want a divorce, I won't contest it. I'll move out. You can keep the house. You can keep custody. Why now? I asked. Why not fight for it? Because I don't deserve to, she said. And because I know I lost you both the moment I chose silence. She handed me a letter. It's for him. When he's ready. Then she packed a bag. She left that night. Quietly. No drama. Just one last look back from the doorway. For a moment, I saw the girl I had fallen in love with 20 years ago, the one who smiled like she was holding a secret and loved like it was oxygen. But that girl had died a long time ago. Now, it was just ashes. And we were both standing in the smoke. After she left, I opened the windows. Let the cold air rush in. It didn't fix anything. But it felt like a start. It took a few weeks after she left before the silence in the house started to feel like peace instead of punishment. At first, every creak of the floor, every echo off the walls reminded me she wasn't there. I kept expecting her to walk into the room with a coffee mug or a guilt-soaked apology. But she didn't. She stayed gone. My son and I settled into a rhythm that wasn't new, but felt new. Breakfast was quiet but calm. He stayed up later than usual. We watched movies without saying much. He'd sit in the chair where she used to curl up, and I'd catch him glancing toward the empty seat like he wasn't sure whether to miss her or hate her. I didn't push him. He was grieving something that never truly existed, and that's the hardest kind of grief, the kind that makes you question every memory you've ever had. One night, as I was locking up, he walked into the kitchen and asked me something that hit harder than anything yet. Do you think he knows? I turned slowly. Who? My real dad, he said. Do you think he knows I exist? I didn't know how to answer that. So I didn't. I just looked at him and said, do you want to find out? He hesitated. I'm not sure. But I think I'd like to know what kind of man he is. That was all I needed. The next day, while he was at school, I dug into the file again. Andrew. The man who used to work with my wife. The one who ran the moment I reached out. I hired someone. A professional. Discreet. Quiet. Within 72 hours, I had everything, his address, employment, family status. He was married. No kids. Worked in logistics. Moved 2 states over right after my son was born. No record of any legal issues. On paper, he was clean. But to me, he was just another ghost. I debated reaching out. For days. Then one night, my son asked again. Have you found him? I nodded. I did. Can I see him? I asked, why? He shrugged. I don't know. Curiosity, maybe. Or maybe I just want to know if I got anything from him besides bad timing. So I made the call. I didn't introduce myself this time. I just said, he wants to meet you. There was a long silence. Then a sigh. Then, finally, tell me when and where. I picked a cafe halfway between our towns. Neutral ground. My son was quiet the whole drive there. Hands folded. Eyes on the road. When we arrived, he looked at me and asked, will you come in? I nodded. Of course. We walked in together. Andrew was already there. Gray around the temples now. Wearing a denim jacket and nerves. When he saw my son, he stood up slowly. His eyes widened. And I saw it, the realization. The resemblance. They had the same jawline. The same eyes. But that's where it stopped. My son didn't look at him like a son. He looked at him like a stranger. Because that's exactly what he was. The conversation was awkward. Polite. Careful. Andrew asked about school, sports, music. My son answered with short, clipped responses. He wasn't rude, he just wasn't open. After 20 minutes, Andrew finally asked, "Why now?" My son said, "Because I needed to know who my mother lied to." Andrew winced. "I didn't know for sure. She told me it was a one-time thing. Then she ghosted me. I left because I couldn't live with the not knowing. Or the guilt." "You didn't try to find out?" I asked. "No," he said. "And I hate myself for that every day." My son stood up. "I think I got what I came for." Andrew looked panicked. "That's it? You didn't want to be a father," my son said. "You don't get to be one now." He turned to me. "Ready?" I nodded. We walked out without another word. On the way home, he was quiet. Then he said, "I thought seeing him would make me feel more complete. But it just made me more grateful." I glanced over. "For what?" He looked at me and said, "That I had you instead." That was the moment I knew I hadn't lost him. Not really. But I had one more thing to do. I needed closure. Not from Andrew. But from her. My wife, or ex-wife, depending on how fast the paperwork moved, had kept her promise and stayed away. But I knew she still lived just 30 minutes out of town, in her sister's guest house. I went there one afternoon. She answered the door like she'd seen a ghost. "Why are you here?" she asked. "Because I need you to understand what you really did," I said. "You didn't just lie. You stole something from me. From him. You made me live a fatherhood that was laced with betrayal. And you let a man grow up without knowing the truth of who he is." "I was scared," she whispered. "You were selfish," I replied. "And scared. And weak. But worst of all, you thought I wouldn't love him if I knew. And that tells me you never understood me at all." She started crying. But I didn't stay to watch. I left the letter she'd written him in a sealed envelope on the table. "If you want to give it to him, give it to him. But know this, he's not angry. He's rebuilding. And he's doing it without you." I walked away and never looked back. That night, I handed the letter to my son. "It's from her. I haven't read it. You don't have to either." He stared at it for a long time. Then he opened it. Read silently. Folded it back up. She said she didn't tell me because she wanted me to have a real family. I said nothing. I think she believed her own lie. "A lot of people do," I replied. He set the letter down. "I don't think I want to see her for a while." "You don't have to," I said. "But if one day you change your mind, you won't have to do it alone." He nodded. Then he asked me something I wasn't expecting. "Can we change my last name to yours?" I froze. "It already is mine." He smiled. "No. I mean legally. Fully. Forever." I didn't cry. Not in front of him. I just nodded and said, "Yeah. We'll start tomorrow." That was the day I started to breathe again. 3 weeks after my son changed his last name to mine legally, we got a letter in the mail addressed to the family of Dylan Carter. That name hit me harder than I expected. Not just because it was mine, but because he had chosen it. Not inherited it, chosen it. Every form signed. Every box checked. Every ounce of that decision came from him. And I'll never forget the way he smiled when the judge read it aloud. Dylan Carter. It was more than a name. It was a choice to leave the lie behind. The envelope was from her. No return address, just her handwriting. Inside, a typed letter, longer this time. Apologies, layered in explanations. She had seen the name change in the public record, she said. She respected his decision, but asked if there was any way she could talk to him, just once. One conversation. One moment. Closure. I didn't show him the letter right away. I wasn't sure if he needed that noise in his head again. But a week later, I asked him. She reached out, I said. Wants to talk. He didn't even look up from his cereal. Why? Closure, I said. Her words. Closure's not a right, he replied. It's something you earn. She hasn't. That was his answer. And I respected it. I mailed her letter back. No note. No message. Just return to sender. A silent answer to a long history of dishonesty. I thought that would be the end of it. But 2 days later, she showed up. Not at the house, at his school. She waited outside in her car, watched him come out the front doors. He told me that night. She was just there, he said. Didn't get out. Didn't talk. Just watched. My stomach tightened. Did she follow you? No, he said. But it felt like she wanted to. I filed a notice with the school. Made it clear she wasn't to approach him on campus again. They agreed. Sent a formal warning. But then it happened again. This time at the soccer field. Then outside the grocery store. Always from a distance. Always silent. But still there. Watching. Waiting. I confronted her the third time. I walked up to her car, knocked on the window. She rolled it down slowly. He doesn't want this, I said. You're only making it worse. Her eyes were red. He's my son. No, I said coldly. He was your secret. Now he's our truth. And he chose. I just want to talk to him. Then wait until he wants to talk. Until then, stay away. Because if I have to get the courts involved, I will. And I won't lose. She didn't argue. She just stared at the steering wheel and said, I thought I was protecting him. You weren't, I said. You were protecting yourself. And now you're paying for it. I walked away and didn't look back. After that, she stopped showing up. But I knew it wasn't over. People like her don't walk away. They hover. They wait. They whisper through doors and windows and dreams. So I started preparing again. Not out of fear, but out of caution. I updated my will. Made Dylan the sole beneficiary. I transferred the house into a trust under his name. I opened a private college fund in his legal name, not the name she gave him. Everything I had, I started tying to him. Not because I owed him, but because he earned it. One night, he came home from a friend's and found me working in the office. He leaned in the doorway and asked, Are you doing all this because you think you're going to lose me too? I looked up. I'm doing this because I want you to know you're chosen. Every day. Not just by accident. Not by obligation. But by love. He nodded slowly. It's strange. I feel like I lost a mother, but gained a father all over again. You never lost a mother, I said. You just finally saw her clearly. That weekend, we took a trip. Just the two of us. Cabin in the mountains. No phones. Just air and space and silence. We built a fire, cooked over it, hiked in the cold morning mist. And for the first time since this all began, we didn't talk about her. We didn't talk about DNA or lies or names. We just lived. On the last night, he asked me a question that felt like the final piece clicking into place. Do you think forgiveness always means letting someone back in? I thought for a long time before answering. No, I said. Forgiveness means letting go of what they took. Reclaiming who you are. Letting them back in. That's a different choice. I think I forgive her, he said. But I don't want her back. That's okay, I said. Forgiveness isn't a welcome mat. It's a boundary. We drove home the next morning with the windows down and the sun in our faces. He played music. I sang off-key. He laughed. And just like that, it felt like a real family. Not one built on performance or secrets. But one forged in truth. We got home to find a letter taped to our front door. No envelope. Just one page. It was from her. I've decided to move. I won't contact you again. I hope one day you'll understand that everything I did because I loved you. Even if it was the wrong way. I'm sorry. I'll always be sorry. He read it. Folded it. Lit a match and burned it in the sink. Then he turned to me and said, "Let's finish rebuilding now." So we did. It was 6 months after the last letter when we finally stopped flinching every time the doorbell rang. It's a strange thing, what silence becomes when you're not afraid of it anymore. It stops feeling like a gap and starts feeling like a foundation. Dylan was thriving. He'd made peace with the past in his own way, therapy, long runs, journaling. He never wanted to talk about her again, not directly. And I respected that. Some ghosts don't need exorcism. Just distance. His grades were better than ever. He got into his first choice college. And when the acceptance letter came, he tossed it in my lap and said, "We did it." Not I. We. That mattered more than the envelope. We celebrated that night with pizza, wings, and the same cheap root beer we used to drink when he was 12. I remember looking across the table at him and thinking, she doesn't even know who he became. And she never will. But then came the twist. The one I never saw coming. It was a Friday afternoon. Mail had just come. Among the usual junk and bills, there was a thick manila envelope, no return address. I opened it, expecting maybe another stray legal document. Inside were court papers. And a letter from her. No explanation. Just a photocopy of a medical file. Genetic history. Notes. And a paternity test. A third one. Verified. And beside it, a letter, written not to me, but to Dylan. In it, she confessed. Not just about the affair. Not just about the lie. But about something bigger. The man she thought was his father, Andrew, wasn't. He had never been. She had only thought it was him. But apparently, there had been another man. One night. A mistake she'd buried even deeper than the rest. A man she never told anyone about. She hadn't even remembered his name at first. But she had found him. Somehow. Recently. The test confirmed it. Dylan's biological father wasn't Andrew. It was someone else. And he didn't even know Dylan existed. In the letter, she said, "I don't expect forgiveness. I just thought he had a right to know. And maybe you had a right to decide for yourself." Dylan read the letter in silence. I sat across from him, watching his face shift through emotions I couldn't label. Rage. Hurt. Pity. Exhaustion. "So I'm not even Andrew's kid," he said finally. "She didn't just lie to you. She lied to herself." I said nothing. "Because what do you say to that? She ruined every chance she ever had to be a mother," he whispered. And she kept digging. "Do you want to meet him?" I asked. He shook his head. "I'm not chasing blood anymore. I've got a name that matters. I've got a life. He can reach out if he wants. But I'm done looking." I nodded. I respected it. That night, we burned the letter. Not out of anger, but out of closure. Ashes in the backyard fire pit. Quiet. Final. A week later, Dylan gave a speech at school, his senior address. He didn't tell me what he was going to say. I sat in the back row of the auditorium, nervous and proud. When he walked up to the podium, he cleared his throat and started like this: "When I was younger, I thought family meant blood. That it was about who raised you and who named you and who smiled the most in pictures. But then I learned something hard. That sometimes, family lies. And sometimes, the people who give you life don't know how to give you love. And sometimes, the ones who were never supposed to be there end up being the only ones who stay. I changed my name this year. Not because I hated my old one. But because I finally understood what it meant to choose the life you want. And the man I call my father, he didn't give me his DNA. He gave me something stronger. He gave me the truth. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Not even mine. After the ceremony, he came up to me, pulled me into a hug, and whispered, "Thanks for sticking." I pulled him back, looked him in the eyes, and said, "Thanks for letting me." That summer, we built a fence together in the backyard. A dumb project. Nothing special. But it became something sacred. Two men who had been shattered by the same woman, rebuilding the boundary she never respected. We laughed. We argued over measurements. We grilled burgers on the back porch. And every time I heard him hammer a nail or measure a board, I realized I wasn't hearing the sound of repair, I was hearing the sound of resurrection. He wasn't broken. He was remade. And so was I. We never saw her again. Not in town. Not in court. Not in letters. It was like she finally disappeared into the shadow she'd cast for so many years. Sometimes, people ask if I miss her. If there's any part of me that wishes she had told the truth sooner. And here's the thing, no, I don't. Because if she had told me back then, maybe I would have left. Maybe I would have missed every moment with Dylan. Maybe I would have walked away and never known the son I wasn't supposed to have. And then what would I be now? Angry? Bitter? Alone? Instead, I have this. A house full of real laughter. A driveway with 2 cars and shared tools. A refrigerator with late-night snacks and dumb inside jokes. And a son, my son, who carries my name like armor. This story didn't end the way it should have. It ended the way it needed to. With truth, earned. With love, chosen. With legacy, reclaimed. And for the first time in my life, I didn't just feel like a father. I felt like the one thing no one ever handed me, enough.